Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. Today we've got a video a lot of people have been asking for. It's specifically guitar related. We're going to talk about how to measure out and properly position your bridge. A lot of you guys are doing builds now that are more ambitious than just a basic guitar kit or whatever. Sometimes you're changing out the type of bridge, whatever it happens to be. And a lot of you have asked me, how do I get my bridge in the right place? How do I make sure it's going to intonate correctly? All of that. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. We're working on this really cool guitar with the Telecaster neck and the Les Paul Jr. body. This is for a client. It's a commission job. Yes, I do some commission work, but before you ask, I'm not taking any new stuff on right now. I'm so far behind on what I've got, I might as well be working in government. So I got to get through a couple of these first, and we'll reopen that at some point probably. But for now, let's get to work on this guy. All right, we'll get ourselves a little shop lubricant going. Pro tip, if you're in a wood shop or in, well, college, I guess, it's always better to open your beer with something that isn't actually a bottle opener because, well, I don't know. It just is. It's more fun that way. Okay, so per the client request, this guitar has a Telecaster neck. And the way that this one is going to be set up is Telecaster style-ish. Not like a Les Paul. So we're not going to have a neck angle, which means we're not going to have a Les Paul style bridge. We're not going to have the tune-o-matic system. It's because those are a raised bridge and they require the neck to be at an angle so that your string height works all the way down the fretboard, right? This neck is flat. The neck pocket is now machined flat. The neck itself has a flat heel on it. So we need a bridge that isn't raised. And we're not using a Tele bridge. Actually, per the client request, we're going to use a hip shot bridge. So hip shot makes an awesome bridge. This one, big surprise, from Solo Music Gear. If you're looking for one, there's a Solo Music Gear link in the description. Feel free to pick it up through there. Helps me out if you do. Beautiful, beautiful piece of hardware. Let's take a closer look here. Comes packaged with a piece of cardboard wrapped around it, but very nice. Don't have to worry about slicing your strings on these. I love these things. So this is what we're going to be installing. The key aspect here is going to be getting everything measured. Of course, in order for this thing to intonate properly, we need to make sure it's sitting in the right spot, and so that we don't have our strings slipping off the edge of the fretboard, we need to make sure it's properly centered and that the neck is in here straight. Now, the neck's bloody tight in here, so it only goes in one way, and that way is straight. We're going to start by marking off kind of our general scale length, and then we're going to make sure we have our center, and yeah, we're going to go ahead and put it in. There's usually about an 1/8 inch, I find, about an 1/8 inch of variance between your furthest up saddle and your furthest back one. And of course, your furthest up is always at the higher strings, and your furthest back is at the low strings. So we're going to set it up so that kind of our adjustability on this bridge puts us right along that line when we're in the middle of where the saddles can adjust to, and then we shouldn't have a problem. It's actually pretty straightforward. Let's get to it. You do not need a lot of fancy tools to be able to do this. Basically, a meter stick will get you there. A smaller ruler will, of course, be helpful. Some hydration if you need it. But there are some other tools that can assist you. So we'll talk about a couple of those real quick. One, anytime you're doing something involving your neck, it's nice to have a center finding ruler. This is a Crimson Guitars one. I think if you're looking for something from them, I think the discount code Angove 10 still works, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, Crimson Guitars center finding rule, very nice, and it's a great size and for being able to do small stuff like marking out your bridge. It's also great for marking out your frets and everything like that, so that's helpful. Also, when you're trying to make sure stuff's squared up, I've got an Incra protractor. So this is cool. It's actually got a square on it too, because I was using it for something else, but you just pull that off, and I'll do that right now. And you can use that for making sure, well, it's an aggressive protractor, not quite like the one that Mrs. Texas Toast sent me as part of her like arts and crafts kit that she gave me. Still trying to figure out what project exactly I can use that sparkly lip gloss on. Anyway, so this is an interesting little piece of equipment. Take a closer look. Again, great for marking things like fret slots, great for some kind of precision engineering marking. Not necessary, but nice to have. And I think I've got these linked up in the Amazon link in the description, which also helps me out. But again, I don't think you need one of these by any stretch. And for the purpose of today's demonstration, we're not going to use it. The first thing that I do when I'm doing this is mark out my scale length. I do that because I don't want to be doodling all over this part of the guitar. I want to kind of restrict my markings to the area where they make sense. So I start by measuring from the nut to the 12th fret. Now you should probably know the scale length on your guitar neck, but just in case, do this measurement. Okay, so this is 12 3/4. Both sides are equal, 12 3/4. No surprise there. It's from, in case anyone was wondering, the edge of the nut to the apex of the fret. All right, so that's half my scale length, and I can continue and double that to do my 25.5, or I can measure from that 12th fret to the bridge position. Safest method, go ahead and do both. Why not? So I can do 12 3/4 again here from the bridge to that 12th fret, which is right there. So I get that mark right on the apex. I make my marking here. And again on the other side. And then I'm going to go ahead, for the sake of redundancy and because I apparently have too much time on my hands, I'm going to go ahead and measure twice and cut once, right? And I'm going to measure from the nut all the way down and make sure that that is in fact sitting at 25.5 from the nut, which it is. Okay, so that is where I need my bridge to go. And I can go ahead and draw a line across there if I want to. It's not absolutely necessary, but I'm going to do it anyway because that's my scale length line. That's my intonation line. Now, that is going to go in the middle of the adjustability range of my saddles because, again, there's going to be about an 1/8 inch of fluctuation. There's enough adjustability on these bridges. It's not really an issue, but what I want essentially is for my high string one to be slightly in front of it and my low string one to be slightly behind it. Pretty straightforward. That's probably about where the bridge goes, but we need to make sure that it's centered in relation to the neck. So part of why I measured the scale length first instead of doing this step, again, I didn't want to make big lines all over the place, but what I'm going to do is run the ruler down the side of the neck and make a mark. Make sure it's lined up with the side of the neck so it's actually running straight down. It's not just like kind of against the edge of the neck. You want to have it parallel to this edge, and that's going to be the outside there. Okay, and we're going to do this on both sides and center our bridge on this because that's going to tell us, make sure you get your pencil at a reasonable angle. That's going to tell us kind of the outside range. We want our strings to be centered within this so that we don't have to worry about them running off the edge of the fretboard when we're playing. So there we go. That's kind of the edges, and what I can do now is line up my bridge based on that. But the easiest way to do this, and it helps that this one has paper on it, but I usually just put a piece of tape on it, is use a ruler, or even easier, a center finding rule, and mark the very middle. That's the middle of the bridge, right there. And then do the same on your intonation line here. And line those up. Now this is a time when it would be helpful to have that protractor because you can then create a square line here and line that up to the bridge because this is going to be covered, this line is covered under the bridge. But you don't need any really fancy tools like that. You can just use a very basic square, right? And unfortunately, this is sitting on my neck, but that's not a problem. And you can just use a square and mark that line a little bit up so that you know where the middle has to line up. Okay, do that. Get your saddles set up across the bridge like that, and you're good. That's where the bridge needs to go, and I can position it there. The only other thing you're going to want to do, and this is from an aesthetics perspective more so than anything else, on a tune-o-matic bridge, you can put it crooked and it doesn't look weird. It actually is kind of supposed to be that way, especially the ones with very little adjustability. You want them a little bit crooked, like I said, so you can have that front saddle in front and the back saddle a little bit behind that intonation line. But on a guitar like this, you don't want to have your bridge looking crooked. So what you need to do is just go ahead and take a look at the bottom line of your pickup cavity and your bridge and measure out those spaces to make sure that it's nice and square. So that's a simple matter of confirming that this gap from the end of the bridge to the edge of the pickup cavity is the same all the way across, which it is, and with it that way. I'm going to make a couple more quick lines, and now I've got my bridge position completely marked out, and I can go ahead and drill. Good to go. Now I can drill my 3 pilot holes and get this guy installed. I'm going to do that before I drill my 6 string holes for this one, because this bridge is designed exclusively to be fully stringed through. But we're going to do that in a different video, because most bridges are not designed to be exclusively stringed through like this, and I have had some specific requests for that, so that's going to be a separate one. Select a drill bit for your pilot hole, make sure it's smaller than the screw. It can be up to the inner diameter of the screw. If you're not familiar with that term, inner diameter is that metal shaft inside the threads. Obviously, outer diameter is the one with the threads. So it can be up to that big, and in fact, if it is the inner diameter, generally, that's pretty much dead on. With these thinner drill bits, you don't want to have them at like full extension out of the drill if you can avoid it. So what I like to do is either on a bigger drill bit, I will just use what I'm pilot holing to and then mark with tape. But on these smaller ones, what I do is I just kind of figure out exactly how far out I want it, and I leave myself a 1/4 inch of space. You don't want to be ramming your chuck into the wood, of course, so I leave myself about a 1/4 inch, and then it's very easy for me to gauge when I've gotten to the point on here that I need to stop. Make sure you got your drill nice and vertical. Double check that you're not going to drill through your guitar. We're good. These are actually pretty long installation screws. Anyway, don't have to worry about that bridge going anywhere. Nice and vertical. Clear the bit a couple times if you need to. And I leave myself that 1/4 inch when I drill. Easy as that. If you've got a drill press, this is a good time to use it, but it's not necessary. It's pretty easy to keep something like this relatively vertical, and if you're a little bit off, it really doesn't matter that much. However, when we go to drill the holes for the strings, that's going to be a different story. Now I'm going to take a wild guess here and say you're probably going to be putting some kind of finish on your guitar. But one way or another, remember, erase all those pencil marks, or at least most of them. And then the last step, of course, is just to get this thing screwed in place. Now I realize you probably don't need me to tell you or show you how to do that. But righty-tighty, okay? Righty-tighty. And if it seems like it's not going in very easily, stop. Back it out. Consider using a bigger pilot hole. All right, there's a chance you drilled too small. Some of the hard woods, you need to be careful about what size pilot hole you use. In things like basswood and paulownia or whatever it is, and that kind of stuff, you don't need to worry so much. But in the harder ones, you do. And yeah, make sure you're not going to break your screw, because some of the cheaper bridges, not an issue with these guys, but some of the cheaper bridges come with pretty cheap screws, and they're thin, and you can damage them if you have to torque on them too hard. One other thing, make sure your saddles are out of the way. It's easiest to get that done before you go ahead and install your bridge. If you leave your saddles, there we go. If you leave your saddles in position, on some bridges they're easy to move out of the way. You can just scooch them. On some you can't. On these types of bridges, the hip shot, they're actually pretty stiff. So they don't really shift side to side or anything like that. And they're nice and expensive, so you don't want to damage them. So just get them out of the way first. In fact, you may want to consider just even taking the saddles off. But if you loosen them enough, generally you can just kind of flip them onto their sides like this to get them out of the way. And that gives you a little extra room to work without having to worry about hitting them. Last screw, righty tighty. All right, guys, so that's it. A very important process, but like I said, a pretty straightforward one. You don't have to be an engineer to figure this out. It just needs to be centered and in the right place. Pretty straightforward. It's mostly a matter of just making sure you're measuring. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. Remember to subscribe so you can see the string ferrule drilling video and the paint job and everything on this one. This is going to be a fun one. Like I said, I'm really excited to do this build. And unfortunately, I've kind of procrastinated a little bit already. So I need to get some gear on it. We'll see if I mute that or bleep it out, whatever's easier. And remember, let me know in the comment section below if you guys have any questions. Take a look down there, help each other out. You guys know a lot about this stuff. Some of your stuff helps me out, so I always appreciate the feedback. I always appreciate constructive criticism and new ideas. But I also really appreciate when you help each other out, because you guys are answering each other's questions, and it is awesome. It's a community. Thanks again, guys. Have a good one. See you next time.